Hey everyone, welcome to another week of our 9 Square Talks. Thanks for joining us today. Again, we at New Heights have a student ministries team that really loves to be together. Our meetings often go hours just because we really enjoy each other, and we wanted to invite you into that conversation. So thanks for being here. To start us off this week, I was hoping to have a conversation about what was the most courageous thing you have ever done. And I'm intentionally leaving that ambiguous. So whatever courage means to you, go ahead and answer it that way. And along with that, if you're at home right now joining our conversation, just if you in your mind want to say what was the most courageous thing you've ever done, and then tag us in it, we'd love to hear from you. But I'm going to actually start with Evan, who's at my top left. Evan, start us off.
Well, when I think of like courageous things I've done, I usually just think of really stupid things that I've done. So I jumped probably things that are probably a little bit too high in the past, whether it's cliff jumping or swimming or body surfing or whatever. One story, when I was in college, when I was at Biola, there's this like, basically it's a group of guys and me. There's like this large drain that leaves the college campus that goes, it feels like miles, and it goes underneath the city to a local park. And that's what we've always said, like if anyone wanted to get on the campus, that's how they do it. So at like the middle of the night, we went without flashlights and walked like the whole thing. And it was like the sketchiest thing that I've ever done. That's the thing that like sticks out to me. It's not.
Yeah, I get claustrophobic just listening to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man. All right, we're gonna hop over to my friend Jarrett.
I'm kind of with Evan. Most of the time when I think of courageous, I also think of dumb at the same time. But I, back in 2015, went to Uganda, and we visited Murchison Falls on the Nile River. And if you've never been, at least in that part of the Nile River, it's like ridiculously strong. It's like you stick your big toe in and it's sucking you in, and the falls is like an incredible amount of water and power that is pretty much certain death. And even if you do manage to be alive yet mangled at the bottom, there's crocodiles and hippos for you anyway. And so I thought it'd be cool because, you know, the once in a lifetime opportunity to stand on the edge and stick my foot out over the water and take a picture of it, you know, because when else am I going to be able to stick my foot out over the Nile and risk certain death?
Oh gosh.
And Julie Bowe was the leader of that trip, and she wasn't super happy about that.
Oh God.
Because she was responsible for me. I also did a similar thing when I went to Indonesia over the edge of a cliff that was also certain death, and it was totally worth it both times.
Jarrett Carlson, you like flirting with danger there a little bit.
I would like to say
a little bit. I don't recommend that, students, but
all right.
I got cool pictures.
We're going to hop down to my friend Logan.
Mine is less stupid. It's more serious. Anyways. But you guys might know I love writing songs. I started writing songs in high school, and I had done one of my own songs. There's even like a worship song at a talent show. And the prize of the talent show was getting to share it. So if you won, then you got to play at a school assembly. And so I won the talent show with my worship song, which was pretty cool. And so I got to play it at the assembly, and I shared I shared the gospel at this assembly before I told the story behind this song and what Jesus has done in my life. And then I played it at the assembly, and it went really well, and people like really loved it. But then after, I got called in the principal's office, and I guess somebody had said that it wasn't fair that they had to sit into this assembly and get preached at or something. And so then the principal was like, hey, I have to get you in trouble for this. It's not good. But he actually loves the Lord. He was a Young Life area director. And so he's like, you're in huge trouble, but I'm super proud of you. It was the sort of thing where going in front of all of my peers and sharing this thing, it was so nerve-wracking, but it was cool to see some of the outcomes of it.
Oh, that's cool.
That's awesome. That's great. So good. Oh man. And who
You're in
knew,
so
Logan?
much trouble. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. And Logan, it spurred on an amazing life of songwriting. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, we're gonna hop over to Eric.
Okay. Well, I kind of have like a stupid awesome one when I jumped off a plane, just going skydiving, but that's not the one I want to share. The one I have is kind of more of a serious one. And at the time, I didn't know that what I was doing was courageous. I actually thought what I was doing was kind of, I guess in my mindset at that time, kind of dumb, but it was admitting that I had a problem when I was struggling in the past. I sat there at a table with my parents, and they're like, what's going on with you? Tell us, we want to help you, we want to be here for you. And I just had to finally give up and say, you know what, I have a problem, I need help, I need you guys, I don't know what to do. And that just sent me down a road where I started getting the help I needed. I started processing through a lot of the stuff that I was going through, and even starting to overcome some of those struggles. And where I realized it was, I realized it was courageous later on, because it put me in a place to get that help, put me in a place to really realize that what I was doing at that time was not good for me. And to kind of face those things, face the fears of being judged, face the fears of, like being put into groups or rehab or all that stuff. Like having to face that just made me realize just what a courageous step it was. And then once I got through it, I was all the more stronger for having done that. And so, yeah, that's mine. It was difficult, but definitely worth it, taking that step.
That's awesome. That's so good.
Yeah, sorry, I got heavy on you guys there.
No, it's really great.
That's
Cool.
powerful. Yeah.
In fact, we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah.
Great Super Night Square. So.
Thanks for sharing, Eric. Yeah, we love. I think vulnerability isn't always linked with courage, but it takes a ton of courage to be vulnerable. So that's profoundly powerful. We have a special guest with us today. We're going to hop over to my friend Tyler. Tyler, can you introduce yourself and then tell us a moment in your life where you've been courageous?
I'm Tyler. I'm married to Karina, who's one of the squares.
He's right below you.
One of the squares.
Not the bald guy. Never. Actually, my courageousness is similar to Eric's, so I won't do that one. But I was a huge turning point in my life as well. I was trying to think of some or whatever. So I'm a police officer. I work for the city of Richfield. And I've got 2 life-saving awards. I was pretty, I guess, courageous. I saved a guy's life who was overdosing on opiates, and then I had a lady that had low potassium and went into cardiac arrest, and we ended up doing CPR and using an AED and brought her back to life, and she's fine. So
crazy.
that
Sometimes
was
I
super cool.
What I would do in those situations, and I don't know if I would like be able to handle it, or if I'd just be like, somebody else come help.
Well, it was really nice to, like, when we were like working on the lady, to like the fire guys show up and we're like, it's good, we already got this taken care of. They're like, yeah, I'll just do your job for you, it's fine.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to be able to fight instead of flight in those moments.
Yeah.
So I like to hear that.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Let's hop down to Karina.
Okay, so my most courageous thing was there's this guy with tattoos that pursued me and married him. There you
Very
go.
courageous. Heard things about that guy.
Capital
Brave.
You are brave.
We're so
I
proud
know,
of you.
I know.
Amen. Let's hop over to JP. And JP, well, actually, let's stop really quick. I do want to do this. JP, tell us a little bit about your involvement with student ministries, and then tell us what your most courageous moment is.
Sure. Yeah. Back when I was not that long ago, I did middle school ministry for 12 years, and back when Evan was in middle school, and Levi, and Jarrett, and Mark Hartley as well. But anyway, did that for a long time, and now I've switched roles. But Evan took over and is killing it. And I watch Nine Squares every single week and wish that I was still a part of the team. So I'm happy to be here.
So JP will be, as Scott Paulson has put it, our resident old guy this week.
I'm owning it.
That's good, dude. That's good.
Courageous. I thought of one thing that was pretty stupid that I did in college, where there's this park in Bellingham where I went to college where the train tracks go by, and it was night, and this train was coming, and we were parked on the other side of the tracks. But the way you cross the tracks is down the whole park where you cross. So we started running down the parking lot, and the train was coming, and it was night, so the light was on the front of the train, and it was honking its horn because it always honked as it went through the park. And so it's like, and it's getting closer and closer, and we're sprinting, and I'm kind of slow. So two of the guys got ahead of me, and me and another slow guy were behind, and the two guys crossed the tracks. And I was looking at the train like, should I go? Should I go? And I chose not to go. And like 2 seconds later, the train goes by. Bro. And I thought that was like such a big deal in my mind, and I don't know why I let it get to that point.
Oh my gosh!
I'm pretty sure I would have made it across the tracks.
It doesn't sound like it.
But if I had tripped or something, if I had pulled, or if I'd frozen in fear or something, yeah, stupid.
Train dodge, stand by me.
That's like literally
train versus human never goes well. Just FYI.
It was stupid. It was so bad. It was.
That's amazing.
Crazy.
Oh man,
my heart was like going crazy. I was super nervous.
Oh god!
And it was all for some stupid game or something. I don't know what. It was nothing. So.
All right, let's hop over.
When your heart does that, JP, it's telling you stop, don't.
Yeah. All right, let's hop over to Levi.
Yeah, I don't know if this fits courageous. A couple of years ago, me and a couple buddies, just like within 24 hours, decided to winter summit Mount St. Helens with like no preparation. Granted, it's not like a crazy mountain, but it was winter, and it was awesome. It worked out great.
Levi,
yeah,
that's amazing. And so you did it just fine.
Yeah, I think we got really lucky. But also, two guys like got really sick.
There it is.
Threw up a ton. I don't know.
There it is.
I don't know if we summited too quickly. Like, I don't think we got altitude sickness because Mount St. Helens is such a low mountain.
Yeah.
But
bro, you can 100% get altitude sickness.
Well, like below 10,000, it's really hard to do that. But we could have gotten like, if you ascend too quickly,
yeah,
then you can get like this other thing that's kind of similar to that. And we did the whole thing really quickly. And I think that might have happened to a couple of us.
I'm glad you mentioned the guys getting sick because I thought you were just going to stop it. Like, yeah, it went great. I was like, bro, what are you talking about? Like,
yeah.
Until you guys started getting sick as we were summiting.
Well, I think the thing for me that was the most courageous. I'm gonna share my screen really quick, but like Eric,
you look so young, Joe.
We were kids there, but the crazy thing is, you may not know this, but Rachel, my wife, is very much an adrenaline junkie. So the biggest roller coasters, like cliff diving, all that stuff, she like wants to do because she experiences a strong sense of FOMO. So I am not that way. And when but I like really liked her. So I was like, for her birthday one year, I was like, I'll pay for us to go skydiving. And so I did, and I did skydive Oregon out in Malala. And then like we're riding up in the plane, and I'm literally thinking there, like, what am I doing? And then it hit me. They're like, in order to jump, like if you don't want to jump, you can just ride down in the plane. And so they're like, you have to say it. And so Rachel was right there, and I was like, yeah, I want to jump, because obviously she was right there. But then next thing you know, they're like, who wants to go first? And Rachel raises her hand, and she's like, I want to go first, and he wants to go second. And so she goes first, like literally, like there's 20 jumpers on this plane. She goes first, and then I just see her go off the plane, and then like I'm sitting down with the guy attached to me on the back, and we scoot, and then my legs are dangling off this plane at 13,000 feet, and he whispers in my ear, and I can barely hear him because like all the wind and stuff. But he's like, can you believe you're jumping off basically the top of Mount Hood? And I was like, why are you telling me this?
They get into your head, right?
Yeah.
Right
And then
before
he's like, you ready to go skydiving? And I was like, uh-huh. And then like we go, and it ended up being an awesome experience. It was super fun. But along with that, I think the most courageous thing I ever did, and actually this is fun because I think Karina and JP were in on this, was the most courageous thing I've ever done was ask that girl out. Because it was like an 8-month-long process of, she was volunteering at the New Heights Clinic, and she would come and get the mail like once a week. And around that time, I would run into the student ministries like area where it used to be, and just look out that window until she came. And
you needed like a team of accountability partners.
Yeah, like for people to
make
be
sure
like,
I ask her out.
Go talk to her. And it took me like 8 months to do it. So that was harder than jumping out of an airplane.
Worth it.
Yeah. Well, this week we're just gonna talk about. Speaking of courage, I saw this article recently. It's from Barna, which is like a renowned like research firm that does all of these studies. But it said, when I saw this line, it kind of caught me off guard. It says atheism doubles among Generation Z, which is basically the generation after millennials. So basically from millennials, which was a generation that really did not engage with faith very much. Gen Z, the generation after, so teenagers today, the rate of atheism doubles among them, which is just shocking because I think most of us here, I'm pretty sure, Tyler, Karina, JP, you guys are millennials still, right?
According to the numbers I've read, I'm barely a millennial.
Yep. So like all of us here, Eric too, you're in that window, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of us here are millennials, and we would say like atheism was a common thing in our generation. The fact that it doubles just shocked me, like amongst current teenagers and young people. So the first thing I wanted to do was just ask why, from your opinion. You again, I'm kind of dumping this on you, so you may not have a strong opinion, but what's your sense as to why that is? And then
social media. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Tyler. Just unpack that really quick, like in like one.
Oh, I think the biggest difference now from me growing up and now, like the kids that are out there now, is social media is huge. There was no social media when I was around. We had like Napster. You know what I mean? Like like I just I think that and the fact that Instagram, Snap, all of those platforms really push a narrative that you should be a certain way, and it's not pushing a narrative that Jesus needs to be a part of that. So because that's the case, then why would I have that be a part of my life?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there is some merit to, like, there are definitely way more voices speaking into someone's life today than there were, I think, for any of us as teenagers. Like infinitely more. So that's good. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna hop down to JP. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
I also think that America is kind of following Europe in getting a little disillusioned with faith. You look at Israel down the generations. Every generation was kind of like more meh about it than the parents, which is really unfortunate. And so every parent's challenge is to try to keep that cycle from happening in their own family. But as a nation, as a country, I just feel like America is kind of getting a little more meh about the gospel, and we're becoming more of a post-Christian nation, like a lot of European countries already are. So I just think the statistics might follow that larger trend.
Totally. And I think part of it too is like in Europe specifically, there was a real sense where church was just a culture. It wasn't a act, you know what I mean? It was just ingrained in the fabric of the culture, which isn't a bad thing inherently. But if that's all it is, then people become very disillusioned by it. And I think America as a nation, and we can all agree with this, like there's just this assumption that it was like a part of who you are, but it never grew into a relationship. So I think that's a really good point. Yeah, that's good, JP. Ev, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, I think as millennials, so our age, I think it's often said that if in terms of faith and atheism, we were a part of what we call counterculture, where faith was an establishment, right, throughout the baby boomers and throughout the mid-1900s and late 1900s, the church was seen as an establishment. And so the millennials rebelled against that in their own culture. And it's often said now that we're moving into what we call a third culture, where actually Gen Zers are now growing up in an established culture without church. And so I think it only makes sense that there's doubling in numbers among Gen Zers because they're growing up in a culture where the church doesn't have a readily available presence.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I was like, I see statistics, and like, if you're a student out there, I don't think any one of us is thinking, oh, there's the double number in Gen Zers because they just really hate church, twice as much as everyone else. I just genuinely think that the culture that they're growing up in, it's just not the same. It's just not as readily available to them. I don't think there's the same amount of information. I don't think the church is the same amount of influence among Gen Zers. I think Gen Z sees their influence in content and in media, and I don't think the church has a large presence in either of those forms on YouTube, the internet, music, film. I don't think the church has an influence in those areas, and that's where Gen Z gets their content and their moral ethic.
Yeah, and that's connected to what Tyler was saying too, that like the church is really far behind all these other voices that have done a really good job of entering the world of Gen Zers. Like the church is, and in a lot of ways behind. Not that that's a bad thing, but that is a reality that we all have to face. Really quick, I just want to ask, like, maybe someone who's joining our conversation today is a Christian who's a Gen Zer, and they are living in a world where they are twice as likely now, if the stats have doubled, to be kind of outnumbered, alone in their faith. So what encouragement would you give them? And I actually am going to call on Logan in light of his story of his courage. What advice would you give to a teenager who is a follower of Jesus, but is alone in light of the Gen Z wave of atheism?
Yeah, I think, man, my advice is to really lean into the hope that we have as Christians and let your identity stand firm there. We have a lot of things, particularly social media. I feel like we say this almost every week in certain ways, but that try to form our identity and tell us who we are. I feel like that's even more of a battle for Gen Z than other people. But if you have your identity fixed, hidden with Christ, hidden in Christ, like that verse says, then it's outside of this world. And then what you get to do because you have your identity found somewhere else is you get to go in almost as a missionary. And the trouble is you're living almost your whole life as a missionary, but you get to go in as a missionary to all these people and offer yourself freely to them, having your hope and your identity fixed somewhere else. It's not fixed in social media. It's not fixed in, what people think of you. It's fixed somewhere else. And I feel like you guys as students are dealing with that more intensely than us 9 had to, and than anybody has to before, have your identity fixed in God. It's just incredible. But I think that's what you have to do. Just have your hope there.
Yeah. As someone who's kind of engaged with the most travel, and really quickly, because we got to wrap up in the next 2 minutes, Karina, who's led a lot of our church's global outreach trips, and kind of gets a global perspective. What's your thoughts? What advice would you give to a Gen Zer who is a Christian right now?
And first I recognize it is tough. It's a tough place to be. It's a tough space to be, but so yeah, just like acknowledging that, we understand that. And one of the things that we talk just a ton about is how important your community is and how important being in a community of faith is. Like Logan was saying, like, we are missionaries, but if you don't have that foundation, if you don't have that solid foundation, it's so much harder to stand firm in the hope and in what the Lord gives us.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Community is super important. Jarrett, Eric, Levi, give me one sentence.
For me, it's just going along the same lines as Karina and Logan, leaning into the hope, into the community, but also leaning into the word. The better grounded you are in knowledge of the word, the more prepared you will be for that opposition, because it will come. People are, with having so many atheists out there, they're going to ask you questions. They're just going to have you ask you all these questions. And if you're prepared to answer some of those questions, you'll be standing firm, and there's even a chance that their hearts could turn.
Totally.
So I'd say definitely stand firm in the word.
Yeah, that's good. Jarrett?
I'd say real quick, what I've found is I think this generation knows it well enough and is kind of tired or just generally uninterested in being preached at or talked at, or like giving them some kind of message verbally. I think the best message that you can give an atheist Gen Zer that you're a peer with is the message that you care about them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they probably, I feel like with social media and stuff, don't get genuine, real love and care like you can give them as a person connected to the genuine and real care of Christ.
In that sense,
If
it's
you can
almost
show
like
that through relationship, I think that's going to be one of the biggest ways that you can impact somebody.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's almost like a cool opportunity that's unique to this generation too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Levi?
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to be yourself.
Yeah.
You don't need to be somebody else. Just be the person that God has created you to be, and I think God will work through that.
Yeah. Well, thanks, all you guys. You guys are all amazing. Just one last thing I'd say too is you're a part of a narrative that's bigger than yourself too. And so just like remember, who wins in the end, the end of the story. And so for me, it's like the world these things happen in waves, but we know where the river is flowing, and so for me, I think if you're just someone who's alone in that, like I didn't grow up in a Christian home, so like I was the only person who kind of had faith in my home life, and then I was in a public school where faith wasn't a big deal, and so in that place, it's like you have to be grounded in something bigger than yourself, and that recognition for me was really important. So that would be a recommendation for me, is like recognize you're a part of something bigger, and also there's Christians in your environment that you don't even know are there. So just remember you're not alone. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank all of you guys. Thanks Tyler and JP for hopping in. We love you guys. We'll see you next week. Thanks everybody.
See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.